Hello, this is Steve, your YouTube English teacher, with a final video in our series of improving your C1 speaking grade, going through each criteria and thinking, what does it mean and how can I do better on it? Thinking today about interactive communication. This is the part where you demonstrate that not only do you have a good level of reading and writing English in your head, but you can also carry out a conversation. You can listen to other people, respond to them, work with them. Pretty important when you are learning a language, right? So we're going to focus on speaking part 3 for this because this is the conversation task. As you know by now in B2 and C1, you have a task that looks like this and you have to discuss this task with your partner and then hopefully make some effort to make a decision. Maybe you don't agree, but again, you make an effort to show that you can negotiate with your partner about what's good and what's bad and what's important and so on. So we have a task like this about things that make you feel calm. This is a nice task that I thought of. I was very proud of this. I could imagine this on a C1 exam. And you're going to be talking with your partner. I've got many videos on this, but it's all about conversation, not monologue, dialogue. Make a point, then pass on the conversation. So to do this, we're going to focus on 3 key functions of how to have a conversation. The first one is initiating the conversation or moving on the conversation. So this is the first thing you do in your answer with phrases like, so shall we start with this? And then after a little break in the conversation when your partner finishes, and what about next topic? Okay, I've said this, let's move on to next topic. These kind of phrases show that you can guide a conversation, which is the skill they want to see in the exam. For example, so shall we start with sitting on your balcony? I think it's calming because you can enjoy a peaceful view, maybe some trees, or even if it's in the city, you can see some nice big buildings and it's normally quiet. And there we go, I've made my point. I've shown that I'm going to introduce my point and then I've made my point. That's step 1. Step 2 is going to be inviting participation from the other person. It's a conversation. The other person counts as well. What does this mean in practice? It means asking questions. What do you think? Do you see what I mean? Would you agree with that? How do we do this? Well, we add it on to the end of the point we made. For example, as for reading, it's calming because you can forget your daily worries and focus on the story of the book. Like I often read to help me fall asleep. Do you see what I mean? Then the other person can give their fascinating opinion about how calming reading is as well. And you've demonstrated that you know how to have a conversation. Well done. You have passed level 1 of being a human being. Finally, level 2. This is the one that actually is a little bit difficult sometimes. But we need to respond to what our partner says. Sometimes in the exam, we get caught up thinking about what we're going to say. So I'm looking at my task and I'm thinking, oh, music. Yes, I'm going to say that I really like listening to ambient music when I do my homework and I feel calm. And then you don't listen to your partner. That's not very good because you're supposed to be having a conversation. In a conversation, you listen to your partner, you respond to them. Then you can make your great point about listening to music when you do your homework. So we do need to say things like, yes, I agree because, or well, I'm not sure because, or I see what you mean, but, and then actually say why. You can't just say, yes, I agree, because that doesn't really mean anything. The examiner wants to see that you actually agree. Yes, I agree because I also have a beautiful balcony where I can hear the birds singing and it's very calm. On the other hand, and then you move on. So you actually respond with a point. For example, if my partner says, I think listening to music is calming because you can choose what to listen to. So you feel calm because you're in control of it. Do you see what I mean? Absolutely. But on the other hand, if you listen to music that pumps you up, you won't be calm. So also it depends. When I go for a run, the music is not calming me. You see, I'm actually responding to what they said about being calming music with my own related point. That's how you have a conversation. At least people have told me that's how you have a conversation. That's what I read in the Cambridge guidebook. Not an expert myself, but let's do what it says in the Cambridge guidebook. So with those 3 functions, you should be able to have a good conversation. And then you just need to do obviously the job of coming up with the little ideas that you put in and then putting it all together with initiating it, making your point, moving on the conversation, asking your partner, responding, all of those things in your 3 minutes that you have. Why don't you practice it yourself? Here's another sample task we could have about public facilities in a town. With what we're going to think about here is using those skills that we said. So if possible, if you're in class, pause the video, if you're with a friend, and try and do this task with someone. And give each other feedback and think about what worked and what didn't. Look back at the notes you've been taking from this PowerPoint and see how can I use these nice expressions. And hopefully you were saying some of the things like this. I do like to give you some ideas as well. In fact, you could even now try and do it again once I've given you the ideas, really focusing on the linking it together using the functions that we spoke about. But a park, of course, kids play there. It's good for the environment. The libraries, you've got information. You can have events there, authors there and little literary events. The sports centre is good for fitness. It's good for getting together in teams. The town square, you can meet people, could attract tourists if it's got a nice historical value. And the car park is convenient and also encourages shopping, so it's good for the economy. Lots of ideas you can use. Your job is to really focus on those functions like I was speaking about, to introduce them, to invite participation, and to respond to what your partner's saying with your own little relevant idea. Last one to practice then, because I do like to give you lots of materials, of course, another original C1 speaking part 3 activity for you. Advantages and disadvantages of helping the environment. Do this in your own time. Make your points in the comments, like, subscribe, so on. Goodbye.